Okay, so it seems like I'm being throttled now. Maybe by Starlink, maybe because of where I am, or because of how much maybe I'm using this, but this is the whole point of it. So it's on 480 now, which I still don't even necessarily mind, but I just don't like that it has to be that. Right, because I have it set to 720. Now I'll go back up through, it'll be basically Binghamton into Syracuse now. So that was a nice trip. Right, it seems like an interesting town, city, like, I don't know, I didn't maybe get the full experience, but that drive though back from where I was to here was pretty good though. Like that was pretty relaxing, maybe because of the time of day as well. We get to clown on Biden Avenue. Or there's this interesting thing I looked at, that if I had more time, this is the kind of thing I should do, is like the office supposedly took place here, or there's a lot of landmarks that are related to it, so I could have gone and like an Easter egg hunt and tried to do that, you know what I mean? Like I could have tried to find them all and show them all and stuff like that. Then again, one of these times I gotta do Pokemon Go. This just wasn't the right time because I don't have enough time, but so you got to think, what is something interesting to do, but then you would have to do it in person. So, and that I just find annoying, because then I don't want to be recording or streaming in person. Right, it just feels odd. Or the way that I would almost do is I'd pretend to be on the phone. So I could have this like in my pocket, the camera, and then I'll pretend to be on my other phone talking. Because that's like one of the hang-ups that people sometimes have is like, okay, if you're nervous about being a streamer and either doing stuff in public like that, I just find annoying to do, but also it's a situation where like even just talking in general, right? So like suppose you have that hang up, one of the good ways to solve it would be like to listen to music while you right, like, okay, suppose you have a hang up, you're sitting alone in your room and it feels weird to talk to yourself, whether because somebody maybe overhears and that feels weird, or maybe even though they're in their own room, they're watching somebody else streaming doing the same thing. So like that's the hang up that people have. It sort of shows you the initial mindedness of people. They're okay with the result of something if it's carefully curated so that they're not aware of the nature of the process, so bypassing their critical thinking. But if they are aware of the origin or the nature of the process, they would question it. So if you knew how a holiday came to be, you might not mindlessly follow it, accept it. If you knew how something came to be, oh, this person was so nice, but oh, they went to training to do that exact same thing and went to sales school and blah, blah, blah. Like, and it uses this psychological technique. So all that would be true in either case. But if you're not aware of it, you take it for granted as a solid thing. If you are aware of it, then it's a bad thing. So it's the same process either way. So your awareness is what you're kind of rewarding on the initial basis of being overcompensated or distracted. Whereas the absolutist would look at it more like, okay, it's a flawed process where you understand the nature of the process. So now you just hold it accountable directly. instead of relying on social contrivance or all those things, right? That might seem negative, but those social overcompensations are just a way to specify and exploit something on an inherent basis, because if the value is for humanity, just like human beings and this and that, it'd be more capable to do it. Amalgam theory, right, without something to gain. Instead, it's used as a prop and a pretense to, dependent over extent of pretense, to reinforce the state that you happen to be in, which itself is subversive to amalgam theory and the mass collective of all people everywhere. So, basically, the point of that was that you take on the form of I kind of forgot what exactly I was saying. Like, okay, what happens is that if you're aware of it, it's bad. If you're not aware of it, it's good, even if the same exact thing is being done. So it shows you don't even know what's going on, or you don't want to know. Ignorance is bliss. Or you want to be controlled by your own limited perception and your senses. Whereas you know behind closed doors, you could understand that, oh, certain things are happening. But because they're happening behind closed doors, you just don't think about it, and it's out of sight, out of mind, and so that's it. Instead of, you're aware of them, so now you don't live in this fairy tale that then justifies contrivance and control and overextension. So you try to cover stuff like that up. Like, even the naked body, people can observe that. Like, we all know what people look like without clothes, so why do we even bother wearing clothes then? We can be at peace with it, right? So we reduce our mind to that initial limited state, and we act like, that just doesn't exist, right? We shut our mind off and then are reduced to the limited physical myopic state. So what that actually means is that a couple good views here of like the hills and everything. I like that. But okay, the point was that people, if they're aware of something, it's bad, right? Even the same exact thing. So a good example is that social media clip, like the girl doing renegade dance in her car. She's doing it, right? So number one, she's doing it. That is happening. It's an event that is occurring. She is dancing to the renegade song in her car, right? Number two is she's recording it, presumably with the intent to share it or at least preserve it, right? So those two things she's presumably okay with. But then when somebody else is watching her and recording her, that's not okay. So the process is the exact same, but self-awareness is the enemy. So that shows you how people are controlled in society. Like, it has to be a curated reality. If she did that video with filters and a bunch of, perfect editing, then, oh, it looks perfect. But if not, if you see how it came to be, you'd be like, oh, well, that's just, it's sort of arbitrary and structure reduced within the context of, if you saw the origin of how it came to be, it doesn't even mean it's bad, but it's not absolute exclusive to everything else, or you wouldn't take it so seriously then. Right. So again, like traditions, holidays, or really anything. Yes, of course, we respect the government, the same government in this society that's based on the fact of killing the natives, and like, again, it's not to discredit it, but it's saying they were built up. So what if you follow that example, right? Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, the way that your country was built up was by massacring the natives. So if some invader came in and did the same thing now, I guess that they would be validated because, right, that's how it came to be. Like, there's no lofty higher standard at work, so, right, realistically, it doesn't make sense, right? It's like monopoly over something. Oh, killing people is bad and war is bad, but the government can do it, but you can't, right? So it's like it's bad for the individual, but the government can get away with it and use pretenses and its established authority to do that. But getting back to the voice thing, it's a situation where the voice thing would be like, So what I was saying is like, yeah, if you're nervous about that, like you're talking to yourself and you're streaming in your room or something, recording something, right? It might seem silly, and it is silly, and it is stupid, but this is the kind of thing that people value. So now it's more about, okay, creating it in a way that people like, even if it's dumb, right? But the apprehension about it is kind of like, you can listen to music while doing it, so it doesn't sound like you're talking just to yourself. You're talking over the music, at least. It creates a good psychological effect that way, at least. And the other thing I was saying is that this should lead up through Binghamton. I don't know if it's taking me somewhere different now, but right, the thing is that that's where I need a backlog. Like, I never use scripts or anything, but I at least want a backlog of what I was just talking about, because right, so the thing is that right, that's a good trick psychologically to, or maybe that's like a form of content I could do. Like, I'll discuss random topics until one of them gets like a large number of views, right? At least relatively. Like I did the bunch of videos on this channel, right? This is like my clips channel, and then one of them got like, now it's up to like 7K views, the foot fetish, right? Explaining the foot fetish. So now I should discuss that. I'll discuss fetishes, and then I'll keep doing random stuff until so whenever something gets a lot of views like that, I should make an episode on it as a direct reaction to that. Some of the chess videos rage baited people, even though that wasn't really my intent with them. See, like, I sort of stand by a lot of the things I say, because pretty much everything, because they're very well thought out and deliberate. And so often people get mad about something else, right? They're straw manning, and they're not actually mad about what I said, because I account for their answers and nuance in there, but they're just misframing it into something else. But no, Pennsylvania seems kind of nice. Like, how far is it from here, Scranton, up to the thing, to the, to New York? I'm trying to look for something good that's like something different or unique to this state, right? A lot of these things, mark every grave, that sign says. Oh, really? Is that an order that I'll go around to people's graves and mark them? That you could misinterpret that. You told me to do it. Instructions unclear. There's this one meme that's pretty funny. Like, it's like a photography shop. It's like, shoot the family, hang them up, frame them all, frame the children, something like that, right? That makes it sound very nefarious, which I don't know if that's made up or if that's really what somebody said, but some real sign. Beer and wine. See, you're able to have wine in, actually, I don't know if that's true in Pennsylvania. In fact, liquor stores in Pennsylvania are supposedly all state-owned or something, or that's how it used to be. There's one other topic I was discussing, but now I kind of forgot what it was. So we kind of go all over the place a bit. But it's sort of like the ego basis of something, like, oh, you need to have some ego or zero-sum means or whatever. That, see, this is at least easy pass. But if I go to certain southern states, and you have to get, I think that's one of the most unclear, stupid things ever, especially in this day of automatic tolls. I'll go to Florida, and it's like, oh, now I owe like $100 in tolls, and it's like, how do I know that? And it won't even appear. Like, that's a bad system, because there really should be one that works in all 50 states if they're going to go to this route of the auto thing. But this is a good example, too, of the nature of the larger process, right? That, like, I could go anywhere, Absolutist could go anywhere and observe, And it's like, to me, it's all the same. There's whatever I'm looking at. There's schools everywhere. There's food everywhere. There's, it's no big deal. But right, but other people would see the specifics and say, oh, this is what's different, this is what's cool. So that might seem nice, but then you end up being controlled by that myopic perception, your own ignorance, insistence, versus being aware of the larger process and potentially ending it and potentially, wait, it's saying 81 north, but that's 81 east. But like awareness of the nature of the process. So like, again, absolutists would look at the reality of the world with awareness, like, okay, that's just the same process as with anywhere, and they won't be taken in by appearances and stuff like that, right? That won't matter. Whereas, again, a lot of initial minded people, oh no, they'll focus on the initial appearance and fall for the same thing over and over, like, oh, all they have to do is dress it up more and you would accept it, or you would, go along with any flawed process, which is true even if government in that way, like, oh, but this time the government's good because they dress it up in a different way than those in the past, and then you'll fall for that, and then the next generation will fall for something different. But that's the awareness of the stigma effect of history, which might seem cynical, but it's fair to keep that in mind when you have all this technology, all this accomplishment, everything. Okay, now we're on a good stretch of road at least. But what I was saying before is like that you need the permission of ego to do something. Like, oh, you have to be accomplished or have money, but what if you don't derive value from money? Then you don't care. You're a minimalist. You have just enough to survive. You're happy with that. You're at peace with that. So then what? There's like a scarecrow of a guy's vest, like a burial site almost. What was that? It might be meant as a tribute, but that looked kind of weird, the way that shirt was kind of one of the workmen's shirts, like, what's it called, the yellow construction or highway patrol people. So what you have to understand is, again, people get caught up on the initial and the specifics when it really doesn't matter, rather than getting to the essence of the process, the larger process. So there'll always be this sort of ego cult framing of like, who can best acquiesce to this artificial contrivance state, right? And there'll be like a hierarchy in a cultish way in any society, or who can best do this, like, the minutiae, the particular, who can best acquiesce to this, even though it's not absolute, just this random thing. So, what I will get if I see one on the way, which didn't show up before, is the Panda Express. But it won't be, because it won't be. But that was in New York, too, though. Why doesn't that one show up? I could just go to the university anytime and get it. It's not like... It just feels weird going there just for no reason. Yeah, what I was trying to say is like the ego permissible basis is like, okay, the ego permissible basis is basically as follows, that this cultish reinforcement of something that isn't even real, doesn't even serve a purpose, that is basically just a pretense, right, for that specific era. So you're kind of coping with the cultish nature of that, or even doing it in such a way that it's not something really valuable that you're insisting upon, especially... I love that, falling rock. So what am I supposed to do? Like, just get out of the way if it falls. Like, freaking, there's rocks on both sides. Like, I don't know. It's stupid. Yeah, we get some of this mountainous region, which you do see almost just on the way to Binghamton, too. But it seems to start right around, especially, where in the world is Scott? I could make a meme of that, haha. But, no, it's like... look, dude, the thing is that the fallacy of ego permission that you need money or something, but what if you don't value money? What if you don't care? You're trying to get as little as possible just to remove the need, right? Just enough to survive, and then you focus on your mind and other things, and so you don't derive value from zero-sum possession, means, etc., right, from some collective externality. So in that case, it's harder to control you. You're free, you're at peace, you don't want anything, you're just trying to be free of contrivance, unqualified, that uses functionalism as a pretense that you can never escape from, absolutism or not. Like, even if you're rich, you still can't escape from it. You can kind of bypass it, but the pretense is still there. It's really not about the money. But like, yeah, you need some sort of ego gratification to be free of contrivance, not that the inherent, or like to be initiated into some social contrivance or whatever, which shows you the cultish nature of it, that there's like some incentive, there's some hierarchy, there's all this kind of stuff to prove. It's like, that would fly in the face of amalgam theory, like where it's not about you, it's not about, oh, look at this person just being sort of neutral and free of contrivance and not, you know, placing undue emphasis and just being neutral or whatever, right, being at peace, not because of means, but because of measure, not because of some ego, but because the ego isn't necessary. Ego is necessary to control and be controlled. They're just at peace. They don't derive ego from something, anything like that, materialistic or otherwise. They're just at peace with themselves or with the nature of contrivance, aware of the nature of the process, so they're not trying to prove anything. And so, right, but it's projected like, oh, you must be arrogant if you're somebody at peace with contrivance, and don't try to acquiesce to it or overcompensate for it. Right, so there's a clear incentive of that. That's kind of, again, like a cult, because you're saying you have to kind of, you know, try to compete to see, oh, who can socially contrive best so that they can be partly free of contrivance, but nobody is ever fully free of it. And, oh, based on how much you appeal to other people's ego and overcompensate, therefore you get certain treatment. Like, there's this whole cultish structure, instead of just, if social interaction is good, then just treat it for what it is and separate it from all those incentives. But that's all it is. It's just a tool to control in an overextended way, or to insist upon yourself and your own ego, non-basic self, non-standard, and, you know, not like what I'm doing right now, objective, long form, non-incentive, non-ego. Even for this, people would project, oh, but again, as I always say, to be aware of it is not to be above it. So, or that could be a good social media rock climbing challenge. Try to climb one of these rock walls. Get Mr. Beast on the case right now. But the difference between a good idea and a great accomplishment is simply the means to do it, right? Like, oh, I can have all these great ideas, but I don't have the resources to put it together, right? Versus somebody who does, because whenever something is established like that, it's taken for granted. But the thing is that the thing is that you can see both sides of the road though here pretty good, so this wide angle might be better, even though I somehow oddly like the vertical just because it feels fitting on mobile, like that's what mobile just feels like. But yeah, the ego permissible basis versus if you truly value other people, or you want a free amalgam theory based sort of society, it would just be inherent. Like, it's not about you, like, oh, look at my ego or social contrivance or lack thereof. It's about removing that, because think about it, a social contrivance and gratification basis is a way for people in an overextended empirical society to try to compete for, it's like monopoly over nature itself, and lands and everything is taken by government and by corporations and by force, right? And then you compete over the spoils. So you're kind of acknowledging and validating that they did that. And so now it comes down to social contrivance and gratification. Oh, you're going to compete, and somewhat to your ability and to rise up the ranks in a functional basis, but a lot of it is a social contrivance element. And it's kind of like, you know, so you're trying to compete to fight over the spoils. Oh, this person is more socially gratifying, so therefore, whatever, right? is a better social example, so therefore they get to reap more spoils of this, and this person's not, so they get less, right? And if you reject that, then it's negative by your basis, not that you reject the very basis of that. So but no, it's like a fallacy of permission that you need, or again, preconceived basis, performative aspects, appearance, pretense. So it's your inability to do that, which is nothing more than, again, that cultish social contrivance initiation incentive, and also like coping with contrivance, distracting, cognitive dissonance, right? So people who are initial-minded, not at peace, not aware of the nature of the process, need constant reinforcement for externality, for social contrivance. They have no measure, they're half-assed, they're arbitrary, they're controlled, they're reactionary to externality, right? So they're just not, but it's not that that's the fault of the collective for being that way. It's the fault of you for not adequately overcompensating for that flawed process. And so that's the difference. It's not about, like you're better than other people or something like that. It's that you're aware of the nature of the process and they're not. And so the goal isn't to reinforce, to regurgitate that contrived state or to take any benefit for yourself. It's finality, to put an end to that or to make it revealed and then have people decide from there. But that's how people live in a half-assed initial human function state where it's not credible at all, because what you're doing is you're treating the current state, things are the way they are because that's the way they're meant to be. Biological razor, it's absolute, and now it's just a matter of overcompensating for it, which you shouldn't need to do if it really is absolute, or like distracting from it, or having adequate bread and circuses, or whatever it might be. So you just treat it like it's absolute. You're just a mindless sheep. You would go along with anything. But now it's just a matter of, can we have enough bread and circuses to get us to not question it, or, can we overcompensate for it? Can we distract from it? So amalgam theory, and again, just a minimalistic break away from contrivance that way. Or even like zero-sum means or privilege being brought into the discussion, like it really doesn't matter. So suppose you have that. Suppose you have some privilege, right? And a lot of money or whatever because of it. Never mind that the entire society you live in is based on privilege. If it's, whatever. The privilege of empires is okay, but the privilege of individuals is bad. No, like you have one to counteract the other, let's say. But the thing is that the privilege of or even like, let me get back to the ego basis, like I'm not doing face cam because I reject the ego basis, and I think it's kind of dumb even doing this kind of thing at all, like content and all. But the main point is objectivity, and but that's what people would see. They hear my voice, so then they'll focus on that, or if they saw me, they'd focus on that. They focus on all those things rather than actually the meaning of what I'm saying, which they could think for themselves. So the point is, again, you want to remove the need. It's not about me. You don't need me. You don't need anybody, anything, any structure. But people are weak and lazy and stupid, and they're kind of indoctrinated to be that way. So that's part of being normal. Normalcy is mediocrity. But the same things that people are arbitrarily controlled by, if they're made aware of the nature of the process or it's not overcompensated for, and their ego isn't appealed to, then it becomes bad. So by their own standard it's bad, but they're controlled by the performative aspects of how that's done. And so So again, that ego basis is sort of cultish from the perspective that, like you're competing over that. It wouldn't be necessary otherwise. It wouldn't be like about the self, like the self wants credit socially or whatever. It's the fact that you're sacrificing that, or you're not adhering to the ego basis. And the reason why is because, right, you don't want anything, you're unconditional, or again, amalgam theory. So you're not thinking about yourself in that. You're like, okay, you're not going to do social contrivance because it's a flawed process. It's nothing but ego gratification to overcompensate for a contrivance state, reinforce, regurgitate, rather than reveal the nature of it and then decide. So if you took away social contrivance, then, that's somehow negative. But really, it just shows you the state that people are in that is an imbalanced, unnatural one, created by contrivance and structure, that they wouldn't be at peace with if they were aware of it. And by not engaging in social contrivance, you're making them aware of it, so it's selective awareness, rather than distracting or overcompensating for it. How does it know exactly 24 minutes? Like, fuck. Or like everything's arbitrary and part of the same process, whether you realize it or not. And so it shows you the depth of people's selfishness and how, again, humanity is used as a prop. Not only do you not care about other people, but you would value your conveniences over them. So don't use that as a basis of pretense to control other people and as the basis of society, because that's bogus, right? You'll eat 3 meals a day. You have no credibility. You'll do all kind of luxury things. And again, I'm not saying I do, but I'm not the one. I'm the one actively observing, at least, to what extent I can impact it. I'm observing the nature of the flawed process. So there's no basis to control people at all with unqualified empirical authority. There's none. And again, human beings would be used as a pretense, like, oh, but it's for the greater good or it's for people. But it doesn't matter because it's selective, right? And actually that very contrivant state arguably creates those circumstances, right? An empire drains the resources of other countries, and then we act like, oh, look, we're helping third world countries. That's why it's justified. Like, why our society is justified. Like, but you're the one who created that situation. All the needless things that you do, right, instead of doing the bare minimum. Right, and so the thing with that is basically the fact that, you know, you're in a position to basically, but that cultish basis is the same thing, right? You're creating like a hierarchy, social contrivance with incentive. So you're in that situation, you're not imagining yourself like somehow you have this adequate ego that's necessary to be able to not engage in social contrivance or, right, whatever. Or somehow you are like that, like you're acting like you want some benefit without you're acting like you want some benefit or whatever, is that you don't want anything and you reject the basis itself. And the reason why is because of the simple fact that you're imagining some random person, right? Your value isn't so selfish or narrow, like, oh, it's about yourself and social contrivance and reinforcement and externality. No, you're thinking about random people all around the world. Like, you value all of them. You value human beings inherently, which is the pretense, but nobody actually does that. But again, it's used as a pretense to inhibit and control, so that's what the absolutists would do. They would say, okay, I'm going to really hold this accountable then, and be sure, but, you know, that's kind of not what's done, and then so you're imagining that. It's not about you, it's about some hypothetical person who's starving in a third world country that's been ravaged in part by ours or the globalist system that you support. And then what happens? Oh, but that person isn't in our cult hierarchy tier because they're not socially contriving and interacting with us and gratifying our ego. Therefore, that's why we get to ignore them. Whereas if they were in front of you, oh, now it's not based of self, ego, nearness, postulate, now we value it. Wow. So like that shows you, I mean, just, you'd have to be really stupid, but that speaks for itself. So the one thing is that right, you would take it all the way. So it's like they don't really care. Not only do they not care, but they only use the pretense of care as a means to reinforce a dependent overextended pretense state that actually undermines the very same goal or doesn't actively actually care about it. So you shouldn't be at peace with the process, but again, people are selfish, initial-minded, which is fine, but then there's no basis for structure and controlling people. But that's the selective, myopic manner in which things are applied that are not really true. And then again, you're imagining in that scenario, like, oh, you lack the social contrivance adequate to appease this cultish basis, and so you're treated negatively by it because you don't have adequate dependent overextended pretense or precon or age or stature or whatever performative aspects. So you're not imagining yourself in that situation like, oh, you're offended by that. You're thinking about other random people. So in other words, they would have to adhere to that cultish initiation or be used as a prompt for gratification. As like, again, oh, you'll donate $1, you'll recycle one bottle, you don't really care, and your whole society actually creates that state in part, and certainly doesn't actively undercut it. So, right. So the fact that social contrivance is necessary is like some sort of cultish measure. And is incredibly artificial because something, truly unconditional, like that's the standard that you're bringing in with amalgam theory is, no, you value all people everywhere. You value human life inherently. So if you truly do that, not just as a pretense, then it's not about you, it's not about your initial nearness posture and stuff like that. Your awareness, even in the modern world, your interconnectivity and stuff like that, you would sacrifice everything for it, or you would at least not be at peace with the contrivance state that you're in, or you would at least not, because that's really the cognitive dissonance you have, especially with youth and stuff like that, is the fact that, okay, even as you're growing up, it's like, oh, it's the lack of ability to adhere to this contrivance state. Not the fact that you see as contradictions and you haven't just given up trying to actually think or have any standards, right? You'd be presented, oh, this pretense is why your inherent natural self is restricted and restrained and controlled. But then if you hold it fully accountable, it's inconsistent, and you see, wait a second, that's invalid because, right, it's not consistent, so therefore it's invalid, or it could be done better. Right, but the same measure, so you'd be endlessly holding it accountable, right, and it would be based on the degree of consistency or accountability that would validate it. These all sound like such random, stupid towns. They're just like these one-word, boring names. Gibson, this and that. Like, it's just dumb. Denny's is one of the few things that's actually open 24 hours anymore, and even some of them aren't. But that's like a relic of the past, the 24-hour culture. Right, one of the many things COVID was used as a pretense for. Maybe the greatest evil of all from COVID was KFC chicken tender, potato wedges being taken off the menu. Like, fuck. It happened around that time. Whether that's why or not, I have no idea. But, look. You're imagining that hypothetical person and the culture's hierarchy in which something is valued, right? Some random person, out of sight, out of mind, third world country, human life in jeopardy, right, in a subversive state, they'd be judged by that. Oh, but they're not socially contrived enough, or they're not adequate performative aspects, right? So therefore, like, they're in a lesser state, so therefore that validates ignoring them or not caring about them, and you'll just care only as a pretense. Myopically applied, selective to reinforce your own unqualified empirical state in a contrivance structure. But the point is that that's what you're thinking about. What if I was that random person? Right, what then? So you're, again, the amalgam theory is presenting a non-ego basis where it just, everybody just is, and there's no basis for control or telling other people what to do, ever, anything, right? So that would be the point. There wouldn't be this cultured hierarchy. You view all people the same. So I love this analogy, right? Or this way to describe it. This is what I said. It's not a negative towards the specific or the people around you. It's equal treatment or value of everybody else. So if you truly value human life and human beings and everybody, right, equally, or again, you value life, you value people as a whole, again, amalgam theory of the human family, then you wouldn't give any special treatment to people who happen to just be around you or near you. You wouldn't do that, because then, oh, you're giving them special treatment. So it would seem negative. It would seem like, oh, you have something against the people around you specifically. But no matter where you go, you would always be as neutral as possible and play down the performative aspects, because you're valuing and thinking about everybody else too. So you're treating those random people in a third world country halfway across the world, starving or whatever, you're treating them basically the same way you're treating the people in front of you. Right, which is not negatively, but neutrally. You're not placing any special emphasis just because, oh, I happen to be physically here and interacting with this person. Right, so that is the point, is like, if you have true value, okay, so I'm indifferent to both, or I would care about both. I'm not going to care about one just because, oh, it's in closer proximity to me. Right, so that's the thing. It's not a negative to that specific, although it would be perceived as such. It's neutrality, because, oh, you're holding in trust that value for everybody everywhere. And the same thing applies to, like, family. It's not anti, like, oh, negative feeling towards family. It's the fact that, right, you didn't choose them, so just to simply neutralize that, or even like your childhood, you didn't choose that influence and indoctrination, self-actualized from an inherent base state. Right, so it's not negative, it's not anti, it's just now you're choosing for yourself. You didn't choose that, now you can choose whether or not to value it yourself. So, and the degree to which you value it would be based purely on exposure, right? You've been around them more, so either you dislike them more because you've seen some of their negative qualities, or you like them more because you've been exposed to them longer. Exposure is the defining factor. The same is true of the stimuli-acme specification. You end up with one partner and it's like, oh, because they're so romantic or lovely or this or that. But it's only because you've given them a chance to expose, you know, that level of exposure that much. That's why people are so insecure and possessive about it, because they see how shallow it is and that's all it would take, so they project it everywhere, right? Like, that might not be your intent at all, but if you try to communicate, this is part of the preconceived basis, like, oh, I have a boyfriend effect or whatever, like, yeah, that might not have anything to do with what you were saying, but, oh no, it's some artificial, overextended way to try to achieve that, because that's all you're good for, evidently, is your body, and sex is kind of the framing that they're admitting, they're projecting. That's the only thing you think about, that's the only thing you care about, that's all you're good for, that's all you rely on, your privilege, that's all it would take. That's all it would take to achieve that, would be some basic social contrivance and exposure. That's why it's possessive. You have to censor reality, you can't interact with people of the same gender, etc., etc. So the thing is, the stimuli acme explained for the millionth time, but it still controls you. You are a slave to it, so I'll keep saying it, and you'll never understand because nobody's even listening. But it really, that's the one that makes me feel like it's totally fruitless even doing this, because it's like if people wanted to see something, they already would, right? They have a mind too, just like me. They can be objective too, so they choose not to. You cannot dissuade with reason what came about by desire. You know, you just can't do it. Open for you. Oh, just for me? That's no fair. Or are we still in a zone? This light rule is so stupid. Like in the middle of the day, if it's sunny. So here's the thing, that, right, we talked about the cultish initiation basis. So I'm a little dissatisfied with Starlink right now, because I think that's what's doing it. It's starting to throttle me to 480p when I was already throttling myself to 720 just to get it to work. So I mean, I'm paying for the unlimited plan, so I mean, I'll have to keep scaling down. I'll just do it with no video and only voice, like fucking. But no, what happens is that you need to understand one thing, and like doing something from a place that isn't the ego or isn't incentivized. So for example, right, not everything is that way. Because again, the long form posture, like think about all these discussions. You can personalize and specify, oh, you're only saying that because blank. But then after a while, that gets old. You can label me one thing, but then you end up labeling me everything, even contradictory things. So I'm just being objective. I'm just doing long form thought, long form consideration. You can do the same. So it's nothing to do with me. I happen to be the vessel of it. I happen to just be doing it. But, and it's, again, even unfortunate. So not only would you give a person credit, you would not give a person credit for being objective or trying to qualify it, as I say, qualify an objective way to think about the contrivance state, but you would even condemn them, like, oh, that's you somehow being arrogant, or it's about you, or specify personalized thought. That's somehow a bad thing, even though it's something that everybody would have done already or should already be done, right, where people are aware of the nature of the process, but there's too much benefit in controlling people by that. So social contrivance is the great reinforcer of every empire and every empirical structure, because it's like, oh, be positive towards other people, be nice towards other people, not in such a way that amalgam theory, where you sacrifice everything and give things back and don't and end your machination process, monopoly over nature, empirical, let people be free and fend for themselves, and stop this corporate overlordship of nature itself and land and everywhere on the world. Not in that way, just in like, oh, socially be nice to other people as you reinforce this specific contrivance state that you're in. So it's selective, right? It's not true value, full value, the way an absolutist would do, that would therefore invalidate the nature of the process. Right, if you take it fully. So you take the pretense that they use just to, again, reinforce their overextended, dependent overextended pretense state. You would take that basis, but you would take it fully. Then, okay, that's the basis on which we're being controlled, or whatever the case may be. But then, right. On the basis of which you're doing contrivance, but then you hold it accountable. Okay, then you actually take it seriously and do it fully, instead of the selective. I would say Tim Hortons is a novelty, because there aren't too many around where I am, but certainly a 24-hour one. But there is one since some shared gas station thing around me. The only thing I'll stop for is Panda Express. If there is one, I'll stop, but I don't see how there could be, because it would have shown up, or I don't know. And this isn't even the right kind of rest stop situation either. So like on the way from Albany to like south, there was one, right? There was one in a rest stop that doesn't show up anywhere on any maps or anything. It's like they're not trying to advertise, or they don't care. But yeah, like people have no standards and they just assume a zero-sum projected basis. So again, getting back to that whole cultish initiation basis, right? You're competing for social contrivance points to try to justify and gratify yourself within this overextended empirical state. And so instead of rejecting the basis overall, and so what that leads to is the fact that it leads to, again, you're thinking about those other people, like they don't have the opportunity to socially contrive or put up appearance performative aspects. They're not in your nearness postulate, so you don't really care, you just pretend to care. And so the social buffer wouldn't be necessary. If you truly value all people everywhere, then what's the need, right? What's the need to care about appearances? They don't have an impact on anything. What's the need to socially contrive? It's just a way to reinforce and overcompensate, but also to insist upon the self and like compete, like, oh, my social contrivance performative aspect is better than yours, so therefore I deserve more from this unqualified contrivance state. And you're trying to compete and you're trying to do whatever, or just overcompensate and cope with the contrivance state. So like, what would be the need if everybody's aware of the nature of the process and their own nature? Everything people can do, okay, that's just part of the human variable, idiosyncrasy, whatever. What would be the harm, right? Even if you want to pose some functional basis, then it's half-mast, right? People aren't truly, embodiments of efficiency. They defer to unqualified empirical structure that puts them in a half-mast state. That does it, again, conditionally. True, full, free value would be outside of that. So there's something else at work besides this pure zero-sum efficiency, and that also assumes intent of exactly what people are trying to do. But even if you do all that, right, you're aware of everything, so nothing would surprise you. You're aware of the nature of the process or human nature, so nothing would be a surprise or positive or negative. It just is like, oh, that's something a person can do, just like people can do all kinds of things. But you can say, oh, desensitized, but it just is, like, it wouldn't be a big deal. And so, right, you wouldn't be controlled. Welcome to New York. This is the I Love New York app, and it has like these blank pictures: history, nothing; food, nothing; attractions, nothing. This is the first impression that you make. You have road work, so that road work expanded, or that'll be like Pennsylvania doing that road work, so it ends as soon as New York begins or something. Now we should basically be in Binghamton, because that's like right where you enter the state. It's like right on the edge. Binghamton 9 miles, Syracuse 78. We were able to do it on a full tank of gas, at least from there to back. It's like that incentive where there's something to it, right? Like if you're unconditional, you're at peace, you have a measure, you have value, amalgam theory, you wouldn't be competing over superficial things that don't really matter, and that you could be aware of the nature of the process, that they don't actually have any impact. You could be at peace with your own nature and human nature and realize, okay, that's all part of human idiosyncrasy. You wouldn't be competing at that social level, both to cope with the cognitive dissonance of being reduced to a structured state where you're not free. So therefore anybody who exhibits freedom, oh, that's a bad thing, you got to condemn it to cope with the fact that you're not free. Or whether to, again, do this cultish hierarchy of like, based on your social action, you get rewards or perks from the contrived state versus you get punished by it. Like it's almost like a Chinese social credit score type thing. That sort of, but just on a more literal social level, like just right, you're not at peace with it, you need constant reinforcement, overcompensation, you project incentive in everything the same way that you have an incentive in everything. So somebody who truly values what you claim to value wouldn't have all that. It's just a human being. It's just the same nature of the process. It might seem negative, they're not placing undue emphasis, but that shouldn't be necessary. If you truly value everybody everywhere, you wouldn't value anybody in particular. So you sacrifice the specific for the larger process versus the selfish incentive of like some cultish thing. Right, I'm trying to think of a better way to describe it, right? You have to have tiers and hierarchies like, oh, this person's social contrivance is better or worse than that one, and they make us feel better about our unqualified empirical state where we're both a subject and slave to it, but also where it's also unqualified in and of itself. So whether our participation in it, they're not overcompensating for it or whatever, let it speak for itself, and then they'll get mad at you for the nature of the process that you didn't create and that you're actually even trying to reveal and expose to them, right? Like shooting the messenger fallacy to a T. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is the simple fact that, you know, the other fallacy of the hierarchy, where, you know, just the hierarchy of almost makes me want to look at something in Binghamton, but I really don't have much time here. I should have totally done that while I was there, like buying like 10 boxes of Krispy Kreme donut. You could turn that into a business, and again, you're not allowed to do it, so wink wink, don't do it, but like buy a bunch of Krispy Kreme there, and then you just keep transporting them up and keep selling them here. You could totally do it. I mean, you could totally, I'm sure people do it. In fact, I've seen people doing it, but whether they get them from them or not, I don't know. But, like, what are they really going to do? Right, they'll find some random clown like me. I should try that, though, if I go there. Does that be, like, maybe the quickest way to do it, or is there one, like, closer to the border? And then the cultish initiation that I was talking about is again the same thing of competing over something, right, in a selfish way, because versus, okay, you value everybody everywhere, so there's no special emphasis on anyone in particular. See if there's something different or novel here. Like, these are all basic, boring things, but there's a lot of 24-hour stuff here. Apparently, like 24-hour Wendy's. Like, really? Why do we need that? Dude, that's different. Loves. What is? Oh, but that's a gas station. Yeah, if you make people aware of what controls them, that's negative. If you again, take seriously the pretense that they use only at half mast in a selective application to reinforce their current state, that's bad. If you don't take it seriously at all and don't value it, that's also bad. So it's a half-mast, non-basis, self-selective pretense. right? That's the ego is the glue that holds together contrivance, right? There is no actual basis to it, unqualified, inconsistent, self-invalidating, but the ego, the incentive, non-base of self, right, is what you have to do and indignantly insist upon to take it even remotely seriously. And the other thing that I was saying is, again, you have like some sort of hierarchy or something that you want to prove, right, that there's some incentive behind it. If there's truly no incentive, then you just be neutral and unconditional. And again, you value everybody everywhere, so you don't take seriously a process that strips things away from people and takes away freedom in nature, takes a monopoly over nature itself, right? You don't value that. Even the overextension, the stimuli preservation, it's a very clear criteria. It's not even telling people what to do, it's just a measure. Like, that would be the absolutist measure. You wouldn't have had so many kids if people were absolutists or actually value human life. Everything mass produced suffers inequality for it, including human life itself, right? But people are mindless sheep, they don't have any plan. So the one who doesn't have a plan will be criticized or condemned. Like, oh, if I was to do that, I would actually think about it and choose what to do and then be in control of the result. Whereas they're not in control of themselves. They deny their own nature, so then they're controlled by it at half-mast. And the other aspect of it is the simple fact that you're basically able to consider the, again, let me try to say that thing once more, like the fact that, you know, the ego basis, that there's something to prove. So in other words, people aren't at peace or aware of the nature of the process, but they need constant overcompensation or reframing of it, because they can't face it directly, and if they did, they wouldn't put up with the contrived state, whether because of its subversive nature or inconsistent nature, or even along the lines of again, the inconsistencies that go along with that, because I don't know, you wouldn't necessarily take it seriously. And even, okay, let's see, what are the attractions here? Stadium, what a great name. VM Arena, Zoo, some museum, Discovery Center. I don't know, it's like I almost want to stop here for a second, but I just don't even know what I would want. That's the thing, is like the ego competition that people have an incentive and they're trying to sort of justify. It's sort of like what I call contrivance preying on something, right? Like, oh, I deserve more or less because, or like I deserve more and somebody deserves less because of how our performative aspects are, or because of something like that. Right, and the reason why is because, right, because, oh, so non-impact, social contrivance, whatever. Instead of letting the process speak for itself, it's a process that's unsound or that's equal and across the board. So why not let ability be accountable? Instead, we hide behind social contrivance, because then it would be a true meritocracy, instead of, oh, now it's about some cult of personality, like how nice or how socially contrived is somebody when they're doing something, versus an absolutist mentality would not only not value such a thing and consider it kind of subversive and undermining, but it's kind of the opposite. They might exert themselves so much in so many ways with measure, thought, objectivity, like what I described, or even in terms of the half-assed functionalism to do it in a full way, that might come off negative even, right? Because they're directed to the point, and to try to be as efficient as possible, or that's what they're focused on. That's the base of value. But then it'll be framed as a negative, like, oh, look how hard they have to try, but not that they're doing something else entirely. Or even the fact that, you know, let's look at a concept basically like, it's not that society is a cult of people collectively controlled by some fallacies and so forth. It's that, oh no, that anybody who isn't controlled by that must be labeled, and they just lack the ability to do it. And that's the way the social contrivance is gated in that way, right? You have to adequately acquiesce to it in a way that right, you try to reinforce or overcompensate for it. What else could I describe? Basically the fact that Greater Binghamton Airport. What about the Lesser Binghamton Airport? I want to see that. But look, or, you know, it's like that monotone way that I would do stuff that describes something too. You're aware of the nature of the process and you don't take it seriously and you don't want to emphasize it, but it is what people are controlled by and what they value. So you're sort of playing into it to appease the lowest common denominator, but you're also aware of the lowest common denominator and don't and sort of reject that basis. So if you reject that basis and try to do something else, though, you won't be valued for it. So the best way to do it is unconditionally, and the reason why is because, okay, I don't want anything from this. Not only do I not want anything, but even the act of doing it would arguably cause negative reactions. Because again, people are going to want to shoot the messenger or, you know, blame you for something. So, yeah, this was a pretty pleasant drive. I mean, not too much traffic, not too much, you know, pretty straight roads. That really wasn't bad. I should split these up maybe into doing some polyfavoritism and stuff in the middle, right? So that's a form of cognitive dissonance, though, in terms of, like, you can be aware of the nature of the process, but you still do it, which is hard to reconcile, right? So people would rather indignantly insist upon that, like, oh no, it's really what you want, or really it's a good thing, and it's easy to appease that, like bread and circuses, but it's more about the cognitive dissonance of the measure, like, do you have adequate bread and circuses and distraction and polyfavoritism to overcompensate for the unqualified cognitive dissonance-inducing state that you're in, is the question that modern society poses. Rather than the absolutist would pose like this, that it doesn't matter what the degree of overcompensation is, the measure is still flawed by that basis, or inconsistent or unqualified, so it doesn't matter what your degree of overcompensation is, it's still an unqualified state, and by that basis you would go along with anything. That's why people are controlled by their own ego and selfishness. You have to sacrifice everything to then actually observe the nature of the process. So to be aware of it is not to be above it. You may indeed need to play society's games to survive through that, to be able to even do that. But this notion of having no choice, because again, nature itself is monopolized, and because society would stop you from, that's the real fear. Like, I can stop my car right now on the side of the road and walk out into those woods there, and that's it, I'm free, and I can figure a way, I can improvise, And even if I fail, I'll accept that. And I could live and pick berries and just, I'll figure it out. The problem is that, right, I wouldn't be fearing nature and wild animals like I could figure it out, let's say. But I would fear other people. Oh no, people aren't going to let me do that. Right, you're not allowed to be free or even present the potential. You just can't do it. And why? Like in the name of what? Oh, safety or this or that, but I'm willing to sign a waiver and do that. But no, in the name of, oh, corporations have to have monopoly over resources so they can ravage them, whereas you can't. It's the perfect way to show it. There's a child picking an apple off a tree, right? Like I could put this in one of my short stories, or it's just an imagery to think about. And they're scolded for it. Oh, you can't do that. Meanwhile, behind them is this big excavator that's tearing up the land and you know, whatever, rummaging through hundreds of apples and stuff. It's like, that's why you can compete over the spoils that nobody really owns or nobody really deserves, that are just taken by force originally, ultimately. Right, you can compete over that if you want, but you could also reject the basis. Right, and that's amalgam theory in a nutshell. So like, oh, because somebody bought that land, that's why they have the right to it. But again, by that logic, you could always undo it too. Okay, you could buy that too, so then what? But no, it's like bought from what though? Bought from somebody who killed to get it, who, you know, killed the natives to get it. Right, nobody really owns anything, but there's no real original basis for it. Right, it's all reactive, preconceived. But here's a concept too, it's like people react to the level of emphasis or artifice that you pose. You have to bypass the critical thinking, you have to not be aware of yourself. You have to have an incentive. So if you don't have an incentive that's bad or is projected, you lack the ability to do this incentive that they're projecting onto you, or whatever the case may be. Right. So you can never have that. We're like, okay, this is a flawed process that you're rejecting. Everything must be on a false. That's really the way that people are controlled too. Is like everything is false, absolute, zero sum. There can't be anything besides that. Right? There must be a clear incentive. Zero sum means stimuli acme. There cannot be a measure by which you actually have some thought in your head or some position or some larger goal, right, that even the zero-sum means are for. That cannot exist. It's not allowed. It's not possible. It just can't happen. Got to make like a food travel log guide, right? So if you want A and W, you have to go all the way to Cortland. If you want Panda Express, you have to go either Syracuse University, Fort Drum, or you have to go all the way almost down to, you know, Dutchess County somewhere. If you want Krispy Kreme, you have to go down to Pennsylvania, or maybe New York City-ish even. I mean, so that's not too bad. You can take a 2-hour trip and then stock up on Krispy Kreme and just do what you gotta do. That's like going above and beyond. You bring that to a party or some shit. But no, it's like what people recognize or project is kind of the opposite. If somebody has an incentive or some ego basis, they would insist upon it with some incentive and place undue emphasis, versus somebody who's unconditional and doesn't have an incentive, that's somehow a bad thing, or they'll see like, oh, they're artificial nature of the process, but they're actually being more genuine because they're not placing undue emphasis and they don't want anything. Right, they're just doing it to appease the same process by which you're controlled, but then, oh, it makes you aware of it, so that's negative, versus somebody who overcompensates for it, or again, that deferential ego basis of like, right, placing emphasis or whatever on it. victims of contrivance so deeply that I sympathize with them, right? You honestly don't even know any better. You're so controlled that when rule by omission protocol you are such a slave to rule by omission protocol that you see it where it isn't even there. You're practically hallucinating. You're delusional, right? Non-unconditional, else measure, variable, freedom, self-actualization, none of that can exist. Free will does not exist, right? And society is a simulation that you live in. So what does that mean? It means that basically you see it where it doesn't exist, right? So somebody with no incentive, you'll see the incentive there, but somebody with an incentive you won't, because they place undue emphasis and emotion and overcompensate and cover it up, right? So the undue emphasis is associated with someone being genuine, but really they're just overcompensating for an incentive that they have, right? Whereas somebody not placing emphasis must be, they lack the ability to achieve that same incentive, not that they don't have that incentive, right? So that's what people can't understand. Or again, they see it where it's not even there. They're so controlled by that basis. They concede to that non-value subversive state. They're so used to it. This is what, big corporations prostitute people out socially for incentives, that when they finally run into somebody who doesn't have an incentive, who doesn't care, who doesn't use social contrivance like that, maybe because they truly value it, or it could be amalgam theory, or they want to separate the two, right, not tied to an incentive, anything like that, then they see it there. They project it there to control it and to be controlled themselves, because that's what you need. You need to project some incentive or otherwise to justify the control of society, because without that, then now it's no longer necessary. Right now you can remove the need for it. So again, that's where you realize that people are really they're just slaves to rule by omission protocol. That's all it is. That's why the absolutist is direct. If they want something, they'll be direct about it, or they wouldn't need to say it, because they would just do it or take it, or that's the difference. It's like there's none of this. That's why it gives everybody a bad name. Like this artifice of dancing around something and overextending, and you have to do it in some elaborate way to achieve it, right? Whether it be in relationships or whatever, sales or something. You do all this elaborate ego appeal to achieve the same end, to which people ultimately have to defer to anyway. So if they were aware of the process themselves, it's entirely up to them. But you want this weird competition where you want to deny what you want, leverage it for some incentive, and then end up achieving it a half-mast anyway, right? Be controlled by it instead of being in control of it. Holds the false absolute value and to specify an inherent process, right? All of the emphasis necessary to control you, which you serve as kind of a practitioner of it anyway. But look, the other thing I was saying is that oh man. The ego basis there, or taking the initial or the physical as absolute, even though zero-sum non-base of self, though it shows you the depth of selfishness that has to be present there to be controlled, because you don't even need those things in the first place, but you'll struggle to achieve things that you don't even need, like luxuries, relative comforts. Everything is zero-sum. Everything is reaction relief to inherent. There is no higher standard at work. Not only is there not a higher standard, it's a placeholder to overcompensate for the lack of a higher standard by let's have greater relative means and struggle to get them against each other. So the gratification is just a way to control people. Everything is zero-sum self-interest and incentivized. And so right, but yeah, let's end off on that note of the rule by omission slave mentality, that you see it where it isn't there, right? So ego appeal and social contrivance are used to control or seek some incentive, and so if you reject that, it's the inability to do it, and it's projected, or you see it there, and I agree with that. I actually like that. So if you don't do it, you lack the ability to do it because that's the false absolute, false duality projected. It applies to everybody. But more to the point, by not socially contriving or overcompensating, people see the nature of the process. So that's selective awareness. So that's the absolutist doing the correct thing. Let people objectively observe the objective nature of the process. And the way that they do that is by not socially contriving in favor of it or overcompensating for it. The problem is they'll blame it on you, again, shoot the messenger. Without social contrivance overcompensation, you would point to, oh, that's the nature of the process, zero-sum means or whatever, and the negative is on you. But that process is true anyway, so is the process negative or not? Right, unqualified, specified, whatever. And so the point is that is the process negative or isn't? But it's more like, well, it is negative if you're aware of it, so you want people to bypass and counter your awareness of it by putting up performative aspects and overcompensating and appealing to your ego and undue emphasis. So the process is negative, but you're only aware of it selectively. Otherwise, you're distracted by social contrivance, and that covers it up. So it's not an actual self-aware basis. It's selective because, well, it would be bad if you were aware of it, but you're not aware of it. So it's just a level of thought. One person is thinking and using their brain and self-aware, and the other one isn't. Because again, it's not saying whether one is bad or the other, but again, the awareness of it makes it bad. So it's like, how skillfully can you cover it up or appeal to ego or whatever, overextend, instead of a meritocracy based where it'd be more direct. It'd be more, direct and to the point. And so it's a situation where this is what I should do. If I do it this much, like, it doesn't matter, right? I'm not doing it for anything, but I had to qualify it. I had to be the vessel of objective thought, because people are either too stupid or too selfish because they're just practicing half-mast, be aware of the nature of the process and then vouch for it. But it's this weird credibility that supposedly exists within people who don't think and try to prevent other people from thinking. Thinking is a bad thing, and it shows you like lack of ability, Bolshevik rhetoric, emperor has no clothes fallacy, lack of ability to do this absolute contrivance state, and a cultish herd-like mentality to a collective mass of people. Right? It's a bad thing to think, and it's a good thing to not think. And those are the people who are supposedly credible in their lives, who are telling you not to think and not thinking themselves. Those are the dumb their senses down with alcohol. Those are the people who are basically telling you what to do. What credibility is that? And oh, you can't think. Just put your blinders on and don't think. Thinking is bad. Thinking is to be feared. Thinking is to be condemned. Even though it defines us as human beings, and that's what separates us from animals. Those are the people that would tell you what to do. Right? That require themselves to shut off their own minds to even cope with the contrived state that they're in.